The Immortal Thor issue number 5, 766 legacy number. What an amazing first 5 issues led by Al Ewing and his creative team of artists and colorists and editors. Thor is one of my definitely top 5 favorite Marvel characters, and this story with the Utgard Thor, or the Thor of Ancient, the First Thunderer, is very, very good. Here you see this amazing cover art. I believe it's by Alex Ross. We've got Aurora Monroe, aka Storm, wielding Mjolnir, Beta Ray Bill, Jane Foster, and I don't know if he's depicted here, but even Loki is involved in this all-new Thor course. So we're going to go ahead and give you guys a bit of a background, a bit of godly primordial background into this story of Utgard. Many of you hardcore Thor fans may be very familiar with this. Utgard, the Shadowlands, and Thor and Loki's first journey into mystery, but this was new for me and very exciting, as I'm a big fan of origin stories, because I love origin stories because they provide greater perspective to the present, right? We don't get the present without the past, and we don't get the future without the present. So therefore we don't get the future without the past. But anyway, I love origin stories. I've got a lot to cover. So let's go ahead and dive right into this one, guys. Here we see 3 amazing panels. On the left, we have the current battle ensuing in Thor issue number 5. On the dark side of the moon is what you're looking at. And if you'll notice the lightning emissions, right? The lightning effects. That is because there is a battle going on, a 5-on-1. It is the elder ancient god Tyrannos, the Utgard Thor, versus Gaia's son, the almighty all-father Thor, and his Thor core that he has recruited to battle this ancient titan. And in the middle you see a portion of that titan's, his weapon, his accessory, his wheel of fate, which is to him what Mjolnir is to Thor. And it's very interesting that I mentioned Mjolnir and Thor, because Mjolnir is going to play a very important role in this story. But before we get to that, we're going to have to now jump way, 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 way back before the formation of Midgard, or Earth, in the Marvel Universe. Before we dive into the primordial beginning of the formation of very pivotal characters, we have to take a note to the middle panel of Tyrannos' Wheel of Fate. Now, it said that the wheel had turned, the wheel is turning, and the wheel readies itself to turn. And then below that it says, "Do you understand ye yet?" So to me, this is very, very important, because it's speaking even to reality, our reality. And this is what I love about comics and Marvel comics in general, is that you'll find little gems of truth if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, and know a few more things that I'm not going to touch on here in this video, maybe some other ones. But it's basically conveying, if you will, that time is not there is no confinement to time, right? The past, present, and future are seemingly all happening or converging at the same time, if you will, right? The wheel had turned, past tense. The wheel is turning, present tense, and the wheel readies to turn, future tense. Keep that in mind. And here we see the face of Zordon. Just kidding. This is the face of the primordial demiurge, and you see his eyes piercing with lightning. Now, keeping with the past, present, and future tense of things, there were other demiurges and other realities. There even is a current demiurge, or demiurges that are not yet demiurges, that are going to become demiurges that are amongst the living. Well, similarly to the book of Genesis, not to get religious, but God creating man in his own image, the demiurge sought to create other things in his image, if you will, or like him, and he created gods. Now, these gods are above the Marvel regular level of god pantheon, such as Thor, Loki, Asgard, Hercules, and Zeus. They're above them, and they reside not in heaven, but in a shadow land called Utgard. And he made 3 noteworthy life concepts here. We have one, the magic maker, on the left, upper left there you see. In the middle was one with the wheel and the cycle, and the third was one with life. Now, these three I can tell you now, not to spoil. It is the Utgard Loki, the Utgard Thor, and later the female would become known as Gaia. Now, these three and many other gods or life concepts, they witnessed the forming of the earth, okay? The waters, the oceans, and everything. And also in witnessing this formation, they also witnessed each other. They also were the first gods. They were the first godly siblings. And they were also the first foes. That's right. They went to war. They went to war for millennia, thousands of years, warring with each other. And they would, again, follow a cycle. They would follow things that were etched in their very nature, their very primordial code. And they would return to their beginning and then go again with this war, fighting for superiority to consume one another. All of them except one finally kind of came out of this comatose, this instant gratification, this just stagnation, was Gaia. And that's what she called it. Gaia, who initially wasn't named Gaia because it says she would become Gaia. She would be known, become to be known as Gaia. She sought above this instant gratification of this constant warring and feuding amongst siblings. Gaia also knew that the earth wouldn't survive this. Life wouldn't survive this. Survive what? The warring and battling of the elder gods created stagnation. It produced stagnation. Now, this is very, very interesting and kind of a mind fuck because it's like, well, Tyrannos holds the wheel of fate. And these gods, they have different natures and they it's almost like the battles are playing out according to their natures, according to patterns, according to cycles, almost like some primordial algorithm, if you will. But Gaia, you even see her just in the middle of her siblings, just kind of standing still. She's just not fighting. She's kind of opposed. She's protesting this constant 1,000-year battle because she realizes that it causes stagnation. Now, the earth is Gaia's, and the earth wouldn't survive it. So Gaia sought a new plan, a new wheel, and a new cycle. Jumping into the inaugural issue of the Immortal Thor, how did the Utgard Thor end up in Midgard? What caused him, what lured him, what attracted him to Midgard in the first place? Here we see a shadowy, like the Shadowland Utgard, kind of like a layer. The things that we can make out, we see the eye, we see like a throne or a chair. There's narration mentioning the ominous, the wheel turning and turning and turning. And there we see the bearded figure with the eye, and he says, the wheel turns. This is none other than Tyrannos. And it seems like he might even be captive or restrained to that cedar throne that he's in. But Tyrannos, he knows that the wheel turns, right? The wheel had turned, the wheel is turning, and the wheel readies to turn. And here we see Thor atop the Statue of Liberty in New York City, just enjoying the storm in deep thought. And Thor makes a few noteworthy points. One, that there are forces to which even a god must bow. He is sure in himself. He has won the internal battle. Mjolnir is whole, and once again his faithful companion. And no longer does Mjolnir define the God of Thunder, the All-Father. Because as the All-Father, the magic is Thor's to command, and he gets to decide who's worthy of that magic, who's worthy of that power of Thor, as you see him grazing his hand over the etched-in enchantment of his father, of Mjolnir, that whosoever holds this hammer, if they be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. And he's no longer subject to his father's commandments and rules and policies, because now he has to command himself, which is a lot more difficult than commanding this mere storm on a New York, whatever season this is, night. And as you see Thor's body language and gesture, he kind of just blows it away. There he calls out to the storm, "This is your lord, your liege. I command you to stop. I bid you good day. You can go away now. Let the residents of New York have a minute of peace." Boom, 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 boom. Chaka, chaka, chaka. The Statue of Liberty is struck with two ferocious lightning bolts from dark, shadowy clouds, and it is destroyed. To Thor's surprise, his lightning, his storm, had disobeyed. And not only had it disobeyed, but it had destroyed. What was the cause of this? Why did the storm not listen to Thor? Why did it not heed his call? And we see Thor very symbolically falling to the ground below, where before he was above. Because Thor commanded the storm, but this was no mere storm. This was a superstorm. What God commanded the superstorm? What God would reign when the hurricanes would destroy and rip the structures of mankind asunder? What God would condemn mankind's darkness instead of celebrating their light? What God would be to the Aesir as the Aesir are to the mortals? And there we see the shadowy figure, the wheel. There we see again the wheel, and hoisted in his right hand a bolt of lightning. No, this is not Zeus. This is something different. And here we see this large, menacing, dark, ominous, Zeus-like figure holding a large tree branch-like lightning bolt and a wheel in his left hand, the wheel of fate. And he is standing defiant, triumphant in the oceans, looking at Thor. And he is proclaiming that too long has Midgard chosen stagnation over change. They've chosen illusion over change. They are stagnant. There is no growth. There is no progression. There is nothing. They are stagnant. And he has come to destroy that. He has come to tear that apart, to wake people up from their dreams. He is the bloody awakening. He is Tyrannos, the Utgard Thor. Utgard is a land from where he comes, the shadow land of the gods, above gods. He is the Utgard Thor, the Utgard Thunderer. And he is here to fuck shit up. Here we see the results of the arrival of Tyrannos, airplanes being ripped apart and destroyed from primordial ancient Utgardian bolts of lightning, panic and rioting in the streets, infrastructure being destroyed. Thor is also reminded of a earlier battle with the frost giant Skrymir, and him boasting about him being the Utgard Loki, wielding the magic of the Utgard Loki when he fought Thor, because Tyrannos used the name Utgard. And it also reminded Thor of when he and Loki first journeyed into mystery into the shadowlands of Utgard. And the question is asked that if Thor and his godly pantheon were like mortals to these Utgard ancient gods, then what of these mortals on Midgard? And here we see Thor gathering himself. And this is one of the things I love about Thor. His proclamations, his self-image, his confidence in who he is. And he says, "Tyrannos, hear me." And Thor begins to now, probably for the first time that I've seen him, call upon the Odin force, which is now the Thor force. That's right, the power of the All-Father, the Kamehameha, or the Spirit Bomb, the Hail Mary. And he now issues this challenge to Tyrannos. And he tells him, very interestingly, that he is the Gaius. And I love how Thor throws out all these things that he is. I am the All Father, the Odin's son, the Gaia's son, the Avenger, the defender of the innocent. And he calls upon the Thor force, now it is called, to wield against Tyrannos. And Thor summoned his identity as the All-Father, hoisted Mjolnir in the air, channeled the all-power, turned that sumbitch sideways, and stuck it straight up Tyrannos' candy ass. And we see the effects, the battle between Thor and Tyrannos, Thunder God versus Thunder God, Utgard versus Midgard, had just begun. You see a conversation in the halls of Utgard between Thor's mother Gaia and what would make his uncle, the Utgard Loki, the one that the troll Skymir was using his name as a talisman. And their conversation is very brief and it flows basically discussing current events, that Tyrannos once again walks the earth. Thor is the one that has to contest with him. They also bring up the fact that there was another troll with a variation of the name Tyrannos that Thor has faced. And now that Thor will be tested, and Gaia mentions that he may also be tested by Loki, and she refers to Loki as Odin's foundling, because we know that Odin, the Allfather, found Loki and adopted him. This makes her brother Utgard Loki laugh and say, well, if your son can be tested by this lesser version of me, Loki, as all the Loki now across the millennia are into trickery and storytelling, then he will be destroyed by me, the Loki of Lokis, the Utgard Loki. Right along to the Immortal Thor issue number 2, we move into the continuation of the battle between Tyrannos and Thor. And now we see opening up with Thor focused, calling upon the power that his father gave him, the Odin force, the All force, the Thor force, and that giant Kamehameha-like ki blast rightly directed at the chest of Tyrannos. And Tyrannos, of course, having dialogue with Thor, saying, you dare would use the storm against me, you puny little micro god, just throwing insults at him as Thor throws lightning right back at him, and saying that this means nothing, it does nothing to me, for I am the storm, I am the thunderer, the one who commanded the storm when it very first spoke, not you. Basically belittling Thor, telling him how puny and tiny he is and how mighty and magnificent Tyrannos is. But Thor doesn't really give a shit about this. What we're going to learn is that Thor is starting to use his brain. He's starting to use knowledge, and he's starting to use his power well. And this is going to work out for him very well. And Tyrannos hoists back his wheel, and similarly to how Thor throws Mjolnir, Tyrannos can wield and whip and throw this wheel of time, and whoosh! And we see here that Thor just evades it as it crashes and cascades right in front of Thor, causing massive damage to the floor beneath. And Thor even having even more self-dialogue now, Thor realizes that yes, he does speak the truth, and even with the Odin force, the all-power, Tyrannos is too much for Thor. It takes a lot for Thor, the Allfather, a god, to admit that, hey, this battle, this is too much for me on my own. I'm not going to be able to take this guy down. Not only is he massive in size and stature, but he's massive in power as well. This is the very first Thunderer, the Utgard Thor. So what is Thor going to do now? How is he going to contest? How is he going to battle something that he can't simply just bludgeon with Mjolnir, the Great Crusher? And there you see Thor. One of the costs of using the All Force, as many of you Thor fans know, is it will bring about the All Sleep, as Thor wipes his brow and he begins to get tired. But Thor cannot give up the fight, and he will not give up the fight. For he goes in and he says, well, this storm is still mine to command, and I will not give up just yet. Now we see Thor mentioning wisdom versus just brute force. The wisdom is his now. And we see Thor's plan into action. So Thor, again, calls back and has dialogue with Tyrannos. And he tells him that the earth is his as well, with the storm to command. And basically, Thor says, if I command the earth to open, it shall open. And thus it does. So Thor's plan now is to open a portal, the void, if you will. And the lightning comes down and splits and opens up a portal right there in Midgard, right behind Tyrannos. Now, Thor's plan is a great one because he says, well, if I can't beat him right now, at least I can delay him to buy me time to enact another plan, which will defeat him. So Tyrannos laughs at this, of course, as he does all Thor's attempts, saying that you think you can merely pull me in with the winds of space. Tyrannos says, I am the wind, as he stares into this void here, this iconic, notorious, I believe it's like the void of all. And basically, Thor is not going to give up. Tyrannos thinks that this is not going to stop him and it's not going to seal him or confine him, as he now sees what Thor's plan is. And Thor informs Tyrannos that Mjolnir, the mighty crusher, the greatest hammer of all, has always been able to open portals between worlds, the yawning void. And with his father's power added to his, now the Thor force, he is going to use that power to open up the void, the yawning void, and pull Tyrannos inside and suck him in, even though he knows it won't confine him. So Thor whips that hammer up above his head, and he begins now the vacuuming, the pulling, the sucking, the attracting of this yawning void portal. And we see Tyrannos gripping on the edges there of the lightning from which Thor commanded from the very cosmos through the heavens themselves. And Tyrannos is fighting, pulling himself, trying to use it to pull himself back from falling into this cosmos. When Thor, we see him even more now. The weariness of the all sleep is growing even stronger on Thor, but he can't give up. Thor came this far and he cannot give up. He can't let a monster, a titan like Tyrannos, roam free on Midgard, especially as he begins to weak and begins to go into the all sleep. So Thor is going to summon and muster one last might and one last command, one last summon to finally put Tyrannos away, at least temporarily. And we see Thor muster his strength that he has left and command the winds of Midgard to blow and suck as hard as they ever have before. And this Midgard winds do listen to their liege, to their lord Thor. And as you see there, the void closes and Tyrannos is sealed inside. And Thor falls to his knees, now exhausted from the pull and strain of the all sleep. But Thor cannot sit. He has to do a few more tasks. For there was damage that was done to New York when Tyrannos had arrived, and Thor simply can't leave things the way that they are. So he again further pushes himself. This is just amazing, and I love that Thor does this because now he's almost like breaking through his limits, and he basically ends up using even more of the Thor force, the Odin force, to basically call back and recall the damage that was done to the Statue of Liberty, to the infrastructure around New York, the rubble, people that were injured, he placed them in a position where first responders can get to them, but he could not bring back those who had passed. And Thor, from this point, basically, to go into the all sleep, he had to sleep into a safe place. Very similar to how in the animated series Gargoyles, Goliath and crew had to make sure that they were always in a safe position before sunrise to where no one could attack them or break them while they were in stone form. Thor wants to make sure that he's in a discreet place where no one can get to him while he goes through this Thor sleep. And the best place that he can think of is the gray or the dark side of the moon. Now, skipping over issue number 3, we dive into Thor issue number 4. And there you see, whosoever holds his hammer, if they be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. Because Thor sought to recruit individuals who he deemed worthy of wielding Mjolnir to his cause of putting away Tyrannos. Yes, in sealing Tyrannos in the yawning void, that simply bought Thor time to go around and recruit or to bring people he thought were worthy of Mjolnir to the moon so that he can basically allow all of them to hold Mjolnir, and they would all get the powers of Thor. Very similar to the Donald Blake Thor, how they would have the powers of Thor for 60 seconds once they did not have Mjolnir in their possession. And now we see here that Tyrannos is relentless. He is on his way. He is coming, as all these comic blurbs and narrations say. He is coming. Once Thor sealed him, Tyrannos ran and he flew or traveled across all void and space to get back to where Thor was. Almost like he can sense him, can sense the thunder, and the battle, the new battleground was set, the dark side of the moon. And boom, Tyrannos had arrived, crash landing. There you see him hoisting this long spear-like thunderbolt and his wheel of fate. And there you see Aurora, the storm. She is in her Thor attire because in issue number 3, Thor summoned Aurora from Araco as she was dealing with whatever she was on the former Mars and dealing with what you can find in the X-Men Red comic. Thor just summoned her because he needed her, right? Aurora, he deems her worthy of Mjolnir, and he needs her as one of the members of his newly impromptu Thor Corps that he has formed to take on this mega titan ancient god Tyrannos. And you see Aurora's expression. She's just speechless. Her jaws dropped at the sight of this monster. See Tyrannos wasting no time as he throws and hurls the wheel of fate, telling them that it's going to turn and turn and turn. It is inevitable, and turn to your doom. And we see Kroom as the wheel of fate lands and crashes on one of the craters of the dark side of the moon. And Storm says she never needed Mjolnir to command the thunder, and she launches a thunder strike right back at Tyrannos. Now, in the meantime, we see a portal open, and one of the other members to which Thor has recruited to his Thor Corps, none other than his brother Loki. And he's apologetic to Aurora as well about some past event that he put her through. Probably a good idea because, he wants to make amends now, right? He's no longer the god of lies. He's now the god of stories. Now that we are all caught up, Thor, the Immortal Thor issue number 5, the all-new Thor Corps. So we see the players and the stage is set. And here we go now, the battle. All the players are here. We've got Jane Foster. She's got Mjolnir. Loki, Beta Ray Bill, Storm, and Thor. Now, Thor in issue number 3 built a new hammer out of a challenge and test that Loki put him through. So Thor has that. It's very similar to what Stormbreaker looked like in the MCU. But basically, each of these members are passing Mjolnir. They're throwing Mjolnir around like hot potato in order to keep to reset that 60 seconds that they have the power of Thor, which is very genius. Now they're passing this around, keeping it from Tyrannos, similarly to how you would play Keep Away or some kind of game in elementary school. There'd be a person or victim in the middle, and you're kind of throwing a ball or throwing something, one of their possessions around. And it goes from Jane Foster to Beta Ray Bill, all avoiding the hands of Tyrannos, because Tyrannos does as well want to have Mjolnir. And so you see here Beta Ray Bill hurling Mjolnir, passing it, if you will, to Jane Foster, and it passes right by Tyrannos. And Tyrannos, he grasps for it, but Mjolnir avoids and evades the grasp of the slow old Thunderer Titan. But in doing so, Tyrannos' appetite for holding and wielding Mjolnir, it grows, and he calls the Thor Corps accursed stinging gnats. And basically we see more dialogue. Jane Foster now catches it, and she's on the horse. I love that talking horse. He just adds great comic relief to the panels and to the story. And she basically asked Mr. Horse if he wants to turn, and he's like, oh no, the 4 of you is just enough. And then Tyrannos now again hurling and throws his wheel of fate and says, death will claim all of you now, death upon the wheel. And basically Jane Foster challenges the wheel and throws Mjolnir, the mighty crusher, and crack over budget, boom, boom, boom. The wheel connects and cracks, and to Tyrannos' surprise, what? How is this possible? How can this mere hammer crack this gigantic ancient wheel of fate? And then the Allfather says, as he hoists his new hammer, "'Tis the power of Mjolnir, old one, the crusher, greatest of all hammers. The Uru is stronger than e'er before, and eager to bend the skull of a titan." And this is true. Now, Thor begins to use his plan again and to use his wisdom. And this is very, very interesting because now we see the tides about to turn. And Tyrannos says Mjolnir. Now it's Loki's turn. He gets Thor. And we see Beta Ray Bill shocking Tyrannos with some attacks there. And Loki's like, wow, this is the, first time in a long time I was able to legitimately wield Mjolnir. And he's like, you know what? There's nothing like hurling this hammer at a Titan's face. And you see Beta Ray Bill in the background like, wait a minute. No. And Loki hurls Mjolnir at Tyrannos. Beta Ray Bill's like, no. And I'm imagining because he thinks that Tyrannos is going to catch Mjolnir and he doesn't want that to happen. But why would Beta Ray Bill think that Tyrannos would even be able to hold on to Mjolnir? I don't know. But they're supposed to be passing it between each other. And I guess Loki broke that by throwing it right at Tyrannos instead. And now we see that it's too late because Tyrannos does indeed catch it. But of course he does because Loki, I believe on purpose, threw it right at Tyrannos. And now the rest of the Thor Corps is kind of like, oh shit. Except Thor and Loki, of course. Even the horse is like, well, it's the shits. And basically now Tyrannos, again, right, overconfident. He's saying the hammer is mine. Basically, he's going on about some other spew and arrogant, cocky shit that he's doing, talking a lot of shit, but is he going to be able to back it up? And basically now we see the Thor Corps saying, well, hey, this 60-second timer, it's ran out now because we stopped passing it around each other. We see Thor transforming back, and she even says she can tell that she's lost a significant power boost from Thor. Beta Ray Bill is confused. How the fuck can Tyrannos wield Mjolnir because of the magic enchantment? How is he worthy? And Thor goes on to tell him, well, it's quite simple, Beta Ray Bill, because I judged him worthy. And there you see Tyrannos transformed as all who wield Mjolnir. They have the power of Thor. They get a whole new set of duds. And then Tyrannos thinks now he's about to just smash and clap everyone. But Thor has a little bit to say to him before he does that. And he's going on about what he's going to do with the hammer and how all will fall and perish. And Thor basically tells him, well, before you get on to smashing and blundering and pillaging and all of these things, I want you to answer me a question. And Thor basically lays it on him and he says, what is the power of Thor? Immediately, we see Tyrannos' 15 minutes of fame dwindling as he says, what? Looking at his hands, wondering what's going on. Why can he not summon or utilize Mjolnir? What's going on? What did you do to me? How can I not? And Thor says, the power of Thor is to hold back the storm. That's right, to hold back the storm, to be worthy. And Thor also says his greatest power is knowledge of how to use that power well. And this panel I love because he has 4 descriptors here, and there are 4 characters that wielded Mjolnir. He says to use that power with compassion, with restraint, nobility, and hard-earned wisdom. And each of those things describes those characters perfectly. Jane Foster being compassion, Storm being an Omega level mutant, being able to level the earth, but she restrains it. Beta Ray Bill, Thor's right-hand man and once war general, being very noble, the surviving Corbinite. And of course, Loki, what a turnaround for Loki, right? To be the #1 rival of Thor and gaining all the wisdom throughout the years and going from the god of lies to the god of stories. Thor is telling him that this is what he has learned to do, how to use his power well. Now, what also happened when Tyrannos wielded Mjolnir was his eyes were opened. And Thor says here, what has been seen cannot be unseen. And basically, Tyrannos now, it appears, was under some kind of bloodlust trance, and he couldn't even realize what he was doing. And Mjolnir opened Tyrannos' eyes and heart to the destruction he had caused, to the anger, the chaos, the pain. In Tyrannos' heart, it screnched, it screamed. As Thor asked him, how do you feel now? And he did not want it. He gave Mjolnir back. He didn't want the hammer. And Tyrannos says, basically, this isn't my fault. My brother Utgard Loki commanded me, and the one who sealed me away, thy mother Gaia. And Thor's eyes are wide open as he now asks, he interrogates, he screams back at Utgard Thor, at Tyrannos, what did you mean? And Utgard Thor disappears. He's gone before Thor can even get any answers. Storm is there next to Thor as she praises and applauds his plan. Now, this is very amazing because Thor didn't have to really bludgeon or destroy or kill or smash. This is very good because it shows that Thor is truly now growing in his seed and his time as All-Father. Because, yes, he is a god, and yes, he is, a 100-ton class character, but you have to use your mind. You have to use your mind and intelligence and leverage in conjunction with, whatever physical feats or skills that you may have. Thor proved this by first sealing Tyrannos in the yawning void to buy him enough time to go about and recruit Storm and Beta Ray Bill and Jane Foster and Loki, and then to exercise that genius plan of letting them all obtain Mjolnir and passing it around them. And Storm, he has dialogue with her, and he apologizes and thanks each one of the members for answering the call. And he gives Storm her cape because Storm has to go back to Mars and she wants to make a grand entrance. So she does so with a cape. And then he finally goes to Beta Ray Bill, and they did have a falling out. And Beta Ray Bill admits that it was very, hurtful and painful, giving the brotherhood and bond that he and Thor had built. And but Beta Ray Bill did say that it's good to see that now they are beginning to reconcile. And Beta Ray Bill steps through the portal and goes back to where he does. Loki and Thor have some dialogue, and Jane Foster is there with the horse as well, as Thor looks upon and ponders at what the ancient Utgard Thor said. His mother Gaia had loosed him, and the Utgard Loki had commanded. So this is really good here. The battle has seemed to be done. The battle has been won by Thor and his Thor core. But what an amazing job by Thor to just think on the fly, think of all these strategies. I mean, damn, I would hope that he has picked something up from Tony Stark or, Steve Rogers all the time being on the Avengers, because they don't have godly strength. They're very highly skilled, but they've got to use more strategy and preparation in order to execute moves properly and be successful. And here we just basically see Jane Foster, she can see, I guess, kind of like omens and things about people, and she basically sees that there's some kind of trouble in the future for Thor. And that trouble leads us to Dario Ager's office. That's right, the infamous Roxxon Corporation CEO. And who's this? Is that Rick Steiner? No, it's the Executioner. That's right, he's back, he's alive. I don't know what the fuck happened to him, but he's sitting in the chair. And he's not alone. Now, he's talking to Dario Ager about newly acquired information or artifacts about Thor. And Dario Ager, of course, seemingly having all the money at his disposal, is like, yeah, I got some new stuff. And basically, they're here to make some kind of business arrangement, if you will. But Executioner says, my friend thinks that we have mutual interest in this. Now, who's his friend? Well, many of you can guess. It is none other than the Enchantress. That's right, and she says Enchante. But now we see another, what that potential skull over Thor's head might have meant that Jane Foster saw, but she didn't tell him because she didn't see Thor's death. She just saw some trouble looming in the future. And this trouble might be what it is. The three of them together can't be good, because we know that Dario Ager and Thor definitely have a past. And Dario Ager now sporting his Minotaur form more permanently. But the Enchantress, when she's involved, it can never be good. And now she's even got the Executioner back on her side. So what devious plans, what malicious plots could the three of them be coming up with to try and thwart the All-Father Thor? I am glad that we are all caught up. If you guys have made it this far, thank you so much. This has been Trademark Comics, guys. Leave a comment below, like and subscribe. And until next time, I am out.